This lesson's on adding fractions with unlike denominators. We will be going back and forth with our document camera today and our slides. Okay, so adding fractions with unlike denominators. For example, if you had a fraction 3/10 and 3/5, and you would like to add them up for some reason, the 3 on top is called the numerator, and the bottom number is your denominator. Notice that the 10 and the 5 are different numbers, and different is what we mean by the unlike. So when you're adding fractions with unlike denominators, there's a few extra steps, and think of it like if you were to add apples and oranges. You could have 3 apples and say we're going to add our 3 oranges, and you would get 6 for sure, but it wouldn't be 6 apples and it wouldn't be 6 oranges. But what you would have is that you would have 6 pieces of fruit. So the fruit is what's in common for your apples and oranges. They're both fruit. So the same applies to fractions. So for example, our 3/10 and 3/5, our denominators are not common. They're not the same. They're kind of like apples and oranges. For example, the 10 would look like that, and the 5ths would look like that. So they're different. They're kind of the same, but they're different, kind of like the fruit. So there's some rules for that. Our job is to find the common denominator. So that those two bottom numbers, it's our job to make them the same, and we use multiplication to do that. For example, 5 times 2 would equal 10. And whatever you do on the bottom, you need to do on the top. So 3 times 2 on top would equal 6. So now we have 6/10, and you'll notice that our denominator is now the same. So now it's okay to add, and it would look like that. So 3 plus 6 on top is 9. And then we have tenths, right? So they're all one thing, or they're all tenths now. And so our answer would look a little bit like that. So when you find common denominator, which is what we're going to be doing today in just a second, there are some rules. The first is that the denominator must be the same to add. If they're not the same, it's our job to make them the same, and we do that by multiplying. And whatever you do on the bottom, you do on the top, or whatever you do on the top, you do on the bottom. And we'll practice that, and that means with our numerator and denominators. There's 2 kinds of problems usually you would run into. I like to call it type 1, which is just a little bit easier. There's less steps. Type 2 just means that we may have a few more steps for that. All right, let's switch over to our camera and try some problems. Okay, so our first rule is that denominators must be the same. So when I see 3/10 plus 3/5, the first thing you do is you just check your bottom, and I can see that they are not the same, which means we're going to have to make them the same. Now, I think it's a good idea to rewrite your fractions up and down vertically. That's not a rule, but it's just a good idea because it helps to organize your work and lay it out a little bit better. So we said that I'm making the frown face because we cannot add it that way. We're going to have to make some changes. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the 10 and the 5, and I'm going to make a very simple T-chart. I put the 10 here and the 5, and I'm going to show multiples of 10 and 5. So for example, 1 times 10 would be 10. 1 times 5 would be 5. So they're not the same yet. So let's try 2 times 10. 2 times 10 would be 20. 2 times 5 would be 10. And now I'm happy, right? Because I have my common. So my common denominator is going to be 10. Now what I would do is I would just kind of give yourselves 2 fingers, right? And let's rewrite. So we know that it's going to be tenths. Well, when I look over at the top, I can see that 3/10 is already there. But let's just say if you wanted to kind of prove that mathematically, remember we're using multiplication. And when we looked at our 10, we said that that was 10 times 1 equal to 10. And whatever we do on the bottom we're going to do on the top, and that's where you get your 3. Now, our fifths, remember, we are also multiplying, but this time we were multiplying by 1, 2. So 5 times 2 is where we got our 10, right? Whatever we do on the bottom, you do on the top. So 3 times 2 is 6. And now we're happy, right? Because we have tenths and tenths. We have a common denominator. So 3 plus, right, 6 would be 9. And then our tenths, and we don't need to simplify. So that's how you would do that problem. So that was a type 1 problem where one of our denominators was already the tenths, the ones that we needed. We really only had to switch the one. Type 2 is when we're going to end up having to do both, but it's the same operation. So remember, first step is just look at your denominators, and I can see that they are not the same. And remember, to add, they must be the same. So again, I would suggest that you rewrite. It takes a little bit more space, but usually it's worth it. All right, so we said that I'm making the frown face because we have fourths and thirds, and you cannot add those in math the way it is. So we're going to make a simple t-chart. And we're going to use our fourths and our thirds, our denominators. It doesn't matter which order. You can do that either way. So I'm going to do multiples. 1 times 4 is 4. 1 times 3 is 3. So that's not the same. So let's try 2 times 4. 2 times 4 is 8. And 2 times 3 would be 6. So far, no common denominators yet. 3 times 4 would be 12. 3 times 3 would be 9. So let's keep going. 4 times 4 would be 16. 4 times 3 would be 12. And there we go. So we're happy, right? Because now we have we're going to use this number. This is what our denominator is going to be. Remember, about 2 fingers, right? Give yourself a little bit of space. And so we're going to rewrite these fractions as 12s. So remember, we used multiplication. I'm just going to start with the thirds here. So how did I turn the 3 into 12s? Well, we multiplied, right? And it was 1, 2, 3, 4, which means that whatever we do on the bottom, we're going to do on the top. 2 times 4 would be equal to 8. Okay, let's go to the fourths. We know that our operation was multiplication to turn 4 into 12. And when we did our multiples, that was 4 times 1, 2, 3. And whatever we do on the bottom, we're going to do on the top. So 1 times 3 is 3. And now we're happy because we have 12ths and 12ths, and we can go ahead and add those up. 3 plus 8 would be 11. And then our 12ths. And there is no need to simplify that. So, all right, everybody, let's see, we go back and just to review that we must find the common denominator. We use multiplication. Whatever you do on the bottom, you do on the top. So keep practicing, and thank you very much.